to Coffee and Conversations, presented by the Intimacy of Race. I'm going to see if I can start a watch party here with that. It's not coming on just yet, but we can do that later. But anyway, my guest today is Janet Miller. And, you know, what's special about Janet, and I have her bio up here, but she's actually supports people through energy sessions and her work in different energy modalities. And the reason why I wanted Janet on here is because, you know, there's been a lot of criticism of people in the spiritual community. And so I just wanted to welcome Janet on here and just kind of get her take on what's going on in the spiritual community, and to see what she has done personally in her life, in her business, in her communities, and the challenges she's facing with this conversation about race, racial equality, and Black lives. So welcome, Janet. So happy to have you on here.
Thank you, Eva. I'm so honored to be here. Very honored.
So I'm actually on Janice's summit. And so I'm speaking into this issue as well. And so, you know, after we broadcast live, I'm going to share the link for your summit so people can actually continue the conversation there and see what amazing summit that you put together. But Own Your Divine Light, right? Is the name of it?
Own Your Divine Light at gmail.com. And it actually is in promotion. So it launches July 13th.
Oh, perfect. Perfect timing. So I'll share the link so people can sign up and catch it from the beginning, which is awesome. So I want to ask you, Janet, just tell us a little bit more about the work that you do.
Well, I was called to do energy work. Well, let's see. I started off, you know, becoming sober. That was how my whole journey started. I'm 28 years sober. So my journey started there, and it kind of opened the door to spirituality for me. And that's when I really started to understand, like, those are the questions of why am I here? What's my purpose? All that started coming up when I was probably 38, 39 years old. So it was, you know, I started seeing, well, I've always said that people are always asking those questions. Why don't I? And of course, then all of a sudden there I was in that, what they call the life crisis moment, or the, you know, what's going on in your life. And I got sober, which totally changed my life. And it was good because, you know, it's a family gene. It's in my family. And I went down the rabbit hole somewhat, and I just knew I had to stop. So I was glad. I mean, I'm not the same person anymore, obviously. But, you know, then I opened the door to spirituality. And then I was a nurse. So I always wanted to help people. So I love being of service that way. But then when I went into the healing work, I got introduced to Reiki, and it opened my doors to, wow. And I just knew this was really where I wanted to go in my life. And so bringing that to people, knowing that we could reach people in ways, not just physically through helping them through healing through their, you know, sicknesses or whatever, but it's also an emotional problem. It's a spiritual problem. It's a mental problem. There are 4 facets to healing when you're in the spiritual world. So it's a powerful way. I mean, you're really getting to the core of what's going on with people, or you know, that's what you're working towards, to help people get to their core wounds and to work toward, you know, letting it go and like loving themselves again. And then that's what I learned, to love myself again. And it's an ongoing process. It's not like we totally always do.
Always a journey, right? Without a destination.
Exactly.
So ask you this: in your spirit, your practice of Reiki and your healing practice, how diverse are those communities, or at least the community that you're in, that practices this and that you bring in to help with healing modalities and Reiki?
It's not tremendously diverse, the groups I've been in. I mean, I've had lots of different races come to me, and it's been great. But as far as, like, I mean, there's been a few, but it's not super diverse. I will say that, you know, there's not a lot of different, you know, different races in the group. When I never thought of it, to tell you the truth. So it's interesting that you bring it up, but it's true. It's true. Yeah.
I'm finding, you know, I'm not super in that community, but I have a lot of connections in the spiritual world and the spiritual community, being here in Berkeley where I live. And so what I wanted to ask you, you know, being a white woman, being in communities that aren't typically diverse, you may have 1 or 2 here and there that are part of the Reiki and energy healing communities. What has opened up for you as far as awarenesses with this current discussion around racial equality and inequality and racial justice, but also anti-racism and Black Lives Mattering and the white fragility and supremacy? What has been your greatest aha or awareness in all of this discussion? What are you discovering?
Well, I've been bringing the topic up to my own groups, and some people say, "Oh, you're empathic, and so you're feeling everybody's feelings because you're empathic, and that's a spiritual." A lot of people are. We feel other people's feelings, and I'm like, okay, but I also feel, I'm feeling the pain of what's going on with the Black communities, and I just felt so moved. But I don't feel. I haven't seen a whole. I've heard people talking about it. And people are taking, they really want to, they are, marching. I've seen people marching, things like that. But as far as a lot of conversation, it's really more like they want to say, well, it's really all Black, all lives matter is what I've heard mostly. It's mostly
So I want to go a little bit more personal and intimate.
Oh, about me? Yeah.
What has opened up in you?
Well, for me, I always grew up, I grew up with racist parents. So I was always very aware of race because my dad had a business where he did have Black workers, and he was always, and they were great guys, but yet when he came home, he didn't talk nicely. And I'm like, what are you doing? So that opened my door when I was young. And now I had a few Black friends, not a whole lot. I can say very minimal, but I went to an all-girl Catholic high school.
What are you realizing now, Janet?
So now I'm yeah, true. I've been looking at all my past today. It's like the world is rolling in today. It's like, wow. And I was saying to myself, well, what do you? I feel so much sadness about the situation. I feel a lot of sadness. I feel like we're ready to open the doors for everyone. I mean, everyone needs to be equal. I mean, there's no reason anyone can't have the same thing that we all have.
What have you realized about yourself? I really want to get, because here's what I'm noticing, and I want to get intimate with this conversation.
Yeah, right.
Yes, we all need to be loved, and yes, we're all equal.
That's right.
And all of that. But what's happening to you as a white woman who grew up with racist parents, who is in communities that don't have diversity and inclusion? You can be diverse and not inclusive as well. Okay. What's opening up for you in this conversation where you can see areas in your life?
Oh yeah, totally.
That are working and not working. So let's make this an intimate conversation about the race. And how and it's not made to make you feel bad or anything like that. But this community that this broadcast is in, the intimacy of race, is mostly white people in here. And what I'm creating is a dialogue.
Yes.
And conversations about what's coming up. What are you realizing about yourself? Where do you see that you can make a difference? All of those things. So what is the first thing that you become aware of?
Yeah, well, I realized when I was, just like you were saying, I was spiritual. It's kind of like a spiritual bypass. I said, you're kind of spiritually bypassing here, Janet, because you're thinking, oh, it's all love and light and unity. We want to be all one, but yet that's an easy way to gloss over this. And I was going to come in and talk about that, which I started to, but I was going to go into this, and I mean, I'm glad you said it. You just honed me in. And I said, well, you're not really saying the truth. I'm uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to talk about it. And it's uncomfortable to see yourself knowing that there's not a lot of diversity in what I'm doing, and it's not a lot of, am I doing enough? It's like, you're not even really, you're just touching the tip of the iceberg here. What else can I do? Is what I kept saying. What do I need to do now? So you've had Eva on the show, and now, you get to be on Eva's show, which is really an honor. And what's next? What do I have to do next? And so that's what my question is to me today. I'm like, well, where are you going to go next? It's like, this isn't over. This is just the beginning of the conversation. So I was saying, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure where I want to go, but I do want to keep talking about it, because to me, I feel so deeply in my heart that this is an important thing that we need to change it. We need to change the inequality in the world. And
What are you hearing in your communities? When you bring it up or when you talk about it, because I heard you say, the response that you're getting is all lives matter. And that's a very, very painful response to Black communities, because you know what? That's actually part of a bypass. You don't really want to get comfortable and make it a black and white. And it really is a black and white situation. And saying all lives matter is actually putting a presumptive only Black lives matter when someone is saying Black lives matter. And so that's not the point. And so when someone in your community says that, how does that make you feel? And were you one of those people like, yeah, you're right, all lives matter?
No, I say, no, it's not. That isn't the way it is right now. This is the Black Lives Matter is because they want their voices to be heard now. It's time for them to be heard. And this is their turn. They've been suppressed for so long. We have to be open. We have to be open-minded and listen and ask questions is what I've been learning and understanding. It's time to ask questions and listen. And we're always being defensive. People are defensive, which is the classic white fragility that I keep hearing about. And so I say, no, it's not about that at all. It's the Black Lives Matter is the voice of the Black community are ready to be heard, and it's their time. So that's what I answer to them.
Yeah. And so how is that being received when you take a stand like that?
They don't know what to say. And, I found out that a lot of people, I did do a big, hour-long talk about, because I did a transformation of race training, and I asked, do you have any questions? And most people didn't even know any of the things I was talking about, and I actually didn't know either till I was trained in that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so unaware of so many things. The systemic racism, that was a term I wasn't even aware of. I mean, I'll be dead honest. I didn't know that term until now. I understand what it means. And
transformational race training.
That was through a leadership group, and it was fantastic. It was led by 2 Black women, and they opened the doors to conversation, like what you're doing. They opened the doors to conversation.
So it was led by 2 Black women. You didn't lead a transformation.
No, I didn't do that one, but I did have my own group that I led. That I brought that teaching into them. I brought that teaching into them.
So you shared what you learned from that.
Absolutely. I feel it's so powerful to share that, because we aren't educated. We don't understand how it started. It started so long ago, and it's so systemic, and that we've grown up in racism and don't even realize, because we're so instilled in it. And I always talk about the 4-year-olds who, the Black child always looks at the dolls and the white and the Black, and she always picks the white, because by 4 years old, children learn that there's something wrong with Black skin. And it's like, this is how systemic it is. It starts that young. And it's why is it like that? Why is this happening? So I've been listening to Ibram X a lot. I've been listening to him because he's powerful in his stance, and in his education, he's really educating people, and he's written his book. I haven't read it yet, but I've been listening a lot to him, anti-racist, what it is to be an anti-racist. And he talked about his own experiences, and I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of that when I was young. I don't even remember having any Black kids in my neighborhood, really. So I went to school with some as I was older, but not when I was younger. So all very white, and mostly Irish, and I wasn't even Irish. So I thought I was weird there, because I wasn't even Irish. What's wrong with me? Why aren't I Irish?
So what challenges are you facing in your circle? And we can start with, because I always like to do, at home, at work, and in your larger communities. So within your family, what challenges have you been faced with the fact that you are educating yourself, you are, bringing transformational race training into your communities, you are speaking more openly and more curious about learning more about the pain the Black community is in, and the history of racism and how it is so ingrained in our system. Can you share a little bit about some of the challenges you're facing?
Well, I talked about it with my husband, like, what do you feel? And he's open-minded enough, but he doesn't have any black friends. But his mom had a very close friend who was black, so he grew up with that, and he doesn't he doesn't think about it. Like when our kids grew up, we didn't think about race at the time. It just wasn't a topic. But my school and my kids went to school with, it was a mixed group of people in the school, and my son was invited to parties and things, and it was great. I was so happy to see that.
So with love, honey, I'm going to rein you back in.
Well, I know you're talking about now. What am I seeing now? So
no, I want to know what the challenges you're facing now, because I just want to preface is that and please know the spirit in which I'm doing this. One of the things that when we get uncomfortable in conversations, we start talking about friends we may have had to school with, and so this is really good for our the people who are watching this too, directly. The challenges that you're facing now, bringing up this subject, what does that look like? Is everybody going to, well, I had a black friend, or I didn't talk about it at home, or what are you hearing? And I mean, that could be very well what you're hearing, that people are bypassing the subject of race. Do you see this as a big enough problem to pay attention to it?
Oh yeah.
You just said my husband, he doesn't think about it. He doesn't pay attention to it. He doesn't have any black friends. Well, do you think it's time for people to pay attention and say something? I mean, do something, educate yourself more. Okay, I know a lot of people are in silence because they don't know what to do or say, so they're not saying anything, but maybe they're immersed in education. Before I say something, I want to learn what's going on. So what are you finding, for example, with people like your husband, and you are interested in learning about transformational race training? What challenges are you having in your home with him, not talking about it or not thinking about it?
Well, I know I really want to address it more. I want to, bring in conversation about it, but we haven't really done it yet. I mean, it's in my mind to do it and to talk about it more. I did talk about it with him right away, and that was what we talked about. And then I brought it up, and
what was his response?
He just went, I don't feel like that's something I feel concerned about as far as his connection to it. He doesn't feel like he's a racist, I don't think so, and
well, of course not. Of course,
that's what we all feel. We all feel. He doesn't. I haven't talked about this. I did talk about the systemic part of it. I was breaking down crying. He'd come in and talk to me and say, what's wrong? And we'd talk about a little bit of it. So I think he's open to hear. He's definitely open to hear and listen and to learn more. And
so I'm going to use this opportunity to coach, not to coach you, but to coach anybody who may be listening into that, because when it doesn't personally affect you, that is a stance of privilege. And you see people like, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. So I'm not going to concern myself with it, when it is really, it's a human rights issue with what's wrong with the system. I always say the system is not broken. This is how the system is created. And when people choose to turn a blind eye to it, that is racism.
Yes.
That is being a racist, because if this were happening in your community or directly affected you, it would be important enough to at least be open to learning what's really going on here. Like, for people to say that coronavirus is, well, it's not about me and I don't need to wear a mask because I have a healthy immune system. This is what I hear in that. The marginalized communities who are not educated on how to even take care of their health properly are the greatest communities at risk. But because you have the privilege of eating well and spending hundreds of dollars a month on supplements and having the best health care and being educated, you are going to choose to put those communities at risk because you're only concerned about your rights being violated. And I know that's a strong stand to take, but it goes to the privilege. You have the privilege of turning a blind eye. And so, when you are starting conversations in your family, what I see possible for you is a strong role model.
Yeah.
You know, it's a strong role model.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
in my own marriage, I can always, you know, say that, okay, he may not be interested in this. And, you know, I'm a coach and I coach people on, you know, communication and clarity and bringing high performance into their life, their relationships, their businesses and their communities. However, how I show up, my way of being, that stand that I take, actually is something he sees and admires and starts to pick up on.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have these challenges in your families and in your communities that are not diverse or inclusive, it's really important to learn how your actions can be modeled by other people when they see the stand that you're taking. And so I really want to appreciate you for really being open to diving in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I want to learn. I want to understand. I want to be able to, you know, help the community be in the conversation so that I can take a positive action. Let's put it. I want to take a positive action for the Black communities. And yeah, you know, I brought it up to my sister, and she talked about my dad and his racist way, and she had a Black friend come and to a party once and taking her to a party, and she said, "Don't come to the door, I'll just come out," because she knew it would be causing a problem. So I said, "How interesting. I never knew that story." She never told me that until I talked about it with her. And she said, "Well, I said, you know, Dad was racist." And she goes, "Of course, what am I going to do? That's who he was. You know, we couldn't change him at that time. But, you know, at this point, she was always very aware, which I thought was great, because I didn't know, you know, we didn't talk about it at home. We didn't talk about the conversation, but now she's talking about it a little more. She was willing to talk about it with me. And I thought, wow, you know, and just different, even my children, I talked about it with them. And, you know, like, how do you feel, you know, and they looked at themselves and, well, I guess I don't have any friends that way. I don't have a lot of Black friends.
What do you feel when it comes to a lot of shame and guilt that's coming up in the white community? Because the Black community, we are feeling this generation of grief and pain and hurt and anger, and all of the feels are coming up for the past 400 years. And my experience of the white community is the shame and the guilt and the realizations of how they benefited from growing up in a racist society are coming up. And that's why the defensive is coming up. That's why it's hard to face. That's why it's uncomfortable to talk about. And I want to get your perspective on what may be coming up for you around that and in the conversations that you're having with people, because, you know, it's uncomfortable, and the only way out of a breakdown is to break through it. It's really uncomfortable.
So it is uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable. And I know that what I'm bringing to the table to support, especially people in the white community, is coaching through those uncomfortable conversations, because they are intimate and they are deep and they are uncomfortable. But there's a way to really frame those conversations and really be in bold, courageous action, so that you have an opportunity to have a greater influence and impact, to having people see things from a different perspective. So what are some of the uncomfortable feelings that you're feeling?
Oh yeah. Well, I was so uncomfortable this morning, just saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm going on with Eva, and how am I going to do this? You know, how's this going to feel?" And I was like, really, you know, very uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was listening to lots of things because I love to listen to things and learn. I'm always learning. And I'm like, really, I don't even know what I'm thinking yet. I don't even know how to be clear on everything yet. I really feel muddled somewhat. Like, what action do I want to take? That's my biggest, you know, thought was, well, now you've taken this, like, as I said earlier, and what are you doing? And yet I'm still thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do right now. I'm like, I'm not sure where I want to go with it. And I'm not sure what I need to go with it. And I'm going to ask you, how do I do it? What's next?
Well, you know, I love that you're learning. and you're listening. And and I'm telling the gardener's here and the dog's barking. So I'm going to let her out one second.
Sure.
Let me pause this. Actually, Lexi, you come on.
Oh, so sweet.
I'm Janet.
Hello. What's her name?
This is Lexi.
Lexi. Hello.
It's a gas to be. No.
Good energy.
Quiet.
Good energy.
And so what I would say is that the white communities and white presenting communities are in their infancy on this.
Yes.
And so it's okay to be unsure. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to make mistakes and missteps. The fact is that we know your heart's in the right place and you have the right intention. And it's just like with children, they're not born eating solid food. So you're you're still on the bottle, you're still on the booth. And so, you know what? Give yourself the grace and space. I love this girl. Anybody who knows me knows how much I love this dog, but right now I want to really strangle her. But I love you. My little big mouth. The little ones with the biggest mouth.
She needed attention. Yep.
The gardeners came. My husband said the gardener was this morning. I'm like, okay. But here's what I want to say to that. First of all, how much I honor and appreciate you for really working through the discomfort to come on and have this conversation with me. That's the first step. To be willing to have the intimate, uncomfortable conversations and be open to learning. And so I would say you're doing everything just right. And you're gonna stumble. Be okay with stumbling.
Yeah.
It's like when you taught your kids how to walk. They fell, you didn't yell at them. I'm not going to yell at you, and just realize that a lot of people are processing things differently. We have to keep the conversation going so that we can continue to make progress and not let it die down. Because when we get in uncomfortable situations, we want to make it go away. How much longer do we have to be in this? We're still talking about this 2 weeks later, a month later. Enough with the race already. Everything is not about a race. And it can go on and on and on. But we need allies to really say, you know what? No, we have to stay in the conversation.
Yeah.
We have to continue to learn. We have to hear their pain and be willing to listen to it. So I just want to really appreciate you for being willing to go through it. I think you're doing amazing.
Thank you.
I think you're going to be a strong role model in your community. And if you want a puppy,
here's one.
I will send this little one to fight your battles with you. That's why I love live TV. So what did you hear me say in all of that?
I appreciate everything you said. It was really powerful to hear because you said, I'm doing okay. We meant to be uncomfortable right now. We're in the beginning stages. I'm learning, which and I'm open. So I appreciate that, and that we're all learning, and we're all we're in the baby stages, and we're all, both sides of us are both learning right now how to have this conversation, how to hear each other is really what I'm hearing as well. Listen and hearing each other. When you can hear, but are you listening? That's the other.
Exactly.
You can hear some people, but are you really listening? And not to talk over each other, to literally listen, and to just I've been listening to so many things, and I'm thinking, wow, I've never thought of it that way, and I've never seen it that way, because I'm looking at it from the white privilege, and that's a words that people they get really bristled. And one friend, I heard, this was through the grapevine kind of thing, that she was in terrible fear that people were going to come to her house and take revenge on her. And I'm like, oh my goodness, why would you go to that level? But people do, because it's the guilt. It's all the guilt of this, of the lifetimes of this. It's just incredible that everyone's going through this. We're all going through this unbelievable purge of feeling these feelings that we've never really looked at before. I mean, that's what I'm doing. These feelings are so deep. They're very deep. They're very, I just feel like devastated by the whole thing. It's like, oh my gosh, how could I never have looked at it that way before? How come I never knew that, And how come? It's like, wow. So there's lots of things.
Energy beating yourself up is what I would say to you.
And I'm not beating myself up, but it's just.
I think a lot of people are, that's built-in shame that's coming up.
Yeah.
And just know that we all are products on both sides, on all sides of systemic racism. And the I love what you said, just to be open and curious to learn and really where you can take action that'll be effective. Yeah. Not everybody's meant to be out there protesting. Not everybody's meant to be out there. But, what can you do on your local level? What could you do with your vote? What can you do to even educate yourself about, what your representatives are believing and pushing? And so there's still so much, and we're still in the infancy. And so, I love that you are open to learning and sharing what you're learning to your community. So that's a big deal. Yeah. So
I feel like it's great. And I'm so appreciative that I get to learn right now because, and we get to change everything. We get to change, your everybody's situation in the world, but especially the Black community, which is so, it's so ready.
Yeah. To change. And so, we appreciate having you on our side, Janet. Thank you so
I'm
much.
so grateful.
And I'm going to put the link to your show here because I know what you do as a healer. There's a lot of stuff coming up for us, ancestral, generational, that gets to be healed.
Yeah, absolutely. And
the world needs you.
We're all here to work with each other and help each other. So if you feel called, yes, please connect. We'll all connect. Thank you, Eva, so much for all you're bringing to us.
And Lexi says, bye, everybody.
Bye, Lexi.
Big mouth.
Thank you so much, Eva.
You're welcome, honey.
Appreciate it.